Could China's central bank be moving towards a gold standard? Joining me today is Ken Hoffman of Bloomberg Intelligence. Ken, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Ken, why would China consider such a move?
Well, China's got issues right now. They have something called the third plenum, which is sort of the next decade ahead for China. And part of that plan is they want to make the yuan international. The issue they have is they've issued a lot of yuan. They have, if you were to just put on a dollars to dollars basis, how much money China's put out there, they have more money in the world than the US and Europe combined. Now, the reason this doesn't cause a lot of inflation is because the yuan isn't internationalized. You can't freely trade it, and so they really have been able to keep a lid on the value of the yuan. The question is, if they are going to go and make this international, how do they back that currency so it doesn't collapse? And that leads us to at least consider, could they go on a gold standard?
Right. And what is the probability of it?
Well, it all depends on how they may do it. I think one of the things to watch is later this year, the IMF is supposed to decide, does the yuan become part of the currency that can be held as a currency reserve in banks? If they're not allowed, they may consider something like a gold standard, just like when they weren't allowed to get more votes in the World Bank, they started the Asia Infrastructure Bank. So they may be almost preparing for failing in that telling, because you walk on the street in China and everybody knows about becoming part of the reserve currency. I could walk outside here on Wall Street and nobody here would know what's going on with the reserve currency. It's a big deal for China, and if they're not allowed in, and the US has pretty much a veto vote on letting them in as a currency reserve or not, if the US says, nope, you can't wait 5 years, the Chinese may turn around and say, we have a currency, we want to float, and guess what? We want to back this, be the only currency on earth backed by a metal being gold.
Right, but how difficult of a process is it to back the Chinese yuan with gold? I'm thinking it's not an easy feat here.
They've already started to do just that. They're laying the groundworks. They've built vaults. They've been buying. They're the world's biggest buyer of gold. They've started a China Gold Bank 2 months ago where they said they're raising $16.5 billion to buy gold for other central banks to put their gold in China. So they're doing a lot of the building blocks that if they wanted to, they could build a gold standard.
So Ken, if it were to occur, what would it do to the price of gold?
Well, first to be how they would do it. They couldn't back all of their currency with gold. There's just not enough gold in the world to do that. What they could do is back gold that is held by central banks around the world, therefore they wouldn't need as much. So the big question is, how much gold do they hold?
Right.
We officially know they hold around 1,000 metric tons, and they only updated that 6 years ago. We know the US has about 8,800 metric tons, and our guess at Bloomberg Intelligence is they have around 3,600 to 4,000 metric tons is what they've built. If it's quite a bit more than that, it gives them a lot of leeway to go out there and back the currency.
Right. Well, is there a certain amount needed to get onto a gold standard that you know of?
No, I mean, a gold standard, plain and simple, it's not a big constraint on a currency. It actually is something that worked for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's not this horrible thing. You do have flexibility. Why? Because you say, I have this much currency, and this much currency is worth an ounce of gold. It doesn't have to be the spot price. It could be any price they fix. And interestingly enough, China's starting their own yuan-based gold fix. So there's a lot of things that they could do to make this work.
So, Ken, would it be a game changer? And if so, who would it affect most?
It would be a game changer. It would make gold very interesting. It would make it a currency again in terms of the way the rest of the world looks at gold. It obviously would have a major impact, particularly if China wanted to grow their currency. They'd have to go out and buy a lot of gold, and they'd be a major buy in the marketplace at all times, and that would be a very bullish factor. So if they did go for it, trust me, we'd be talking about fireworks.
Ken, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
And thank you for watching.